I'm going to build a JavaScript library that will make a text behave like crazy. In the end, I expect to have a function that will be called like this. So you find your HTML element, feed it into this function, and it starts randomly jumping, shaking, rotating, and so on. I have no precise result in my mind, but for a start I'd like to figure out what can be easily done using CSS transformations. We have a number of transformations available. We can translate an element, scale it, rotate, skew, and perform some 3D transformations. I'm especially interested in perspective transformation. It's a 3D one. Never tried it, but it sounds cool. And I think it must be enough to produce some really crazy effect if applied really quickly, randomly, and furiously. Let's start with translate, which simply means to move an element horizontally or vertically. That's how I can push an element by 100 pixels to the right. Now let's do it very often, each time randomly changing the number of pixels. There is always a dilemma how to do something frequently. I am tempted to use request animation frame for that, because it looks kind of more solid. But I suppose that in this situation we may not need it. Usually we use a request animation frame because it makes the intervals between frames more consistent and thus guarantees that the animations are smooth. But for now I don't see a necessity for smooth animations here. And I also don't think that we need to perform updates 60 times a second. This might be a little too crazy. So let's simply use setInterval. Here I'd like to change this translate value by 1 pixel every time. I mean randomly either add or subtract this 1 pixel. Let it be 0 for a start. And randomly add or subtract. And surely I forgot to specify the duration of the interval. Let's try 20 times a second, for example. I also forgot to specify units. Now I am calling translate method with just a number, and such argument is invalid. Let's run it, and now the text is shaking pretty well. But let's make it more random and rapid. For example, let's change the translate value by this random number multiplied by 10. I'll store the random number in a constant. We should take care of the performance because this code will be executed very often. Let's try it. It became quicker, but for some reason less random. I see two problems here. First, the movement is unrestricted. And second, the leftward movement now prevails. Let's repeat that several times. It's really always running to the left. It's actually quite a silly mistake. Subtraction takes place when the random number is bigger, so we are always subtracting by a bigger number. To restore the balance, I'll just subtract 5 from here. Now it seems tolerable to me. I mean, it will be alright if we add restrictions to this movement. I'm thinking about restricting it to 10% of the text width. One solution for that is to use percents instead of pixels, and just keep the translate value between 5 and -5%. Such solution is kind of obvious and simple, but there is a problem. These percents are calculated for the element and not for the actual text. I mean, an element, especially block element, might be much wider than the text, and in our case it can be easily demonstrated. This is a div, and it's much wider than the text. And if I try to translate it by 10%, it would mean 10% of almost the whole page. This problem might not look very important, but anyway I am going to fix it because it seems like an interesting problem.